Secret Societies and Revelations 18, The Great Deception, Victor San Vicente. Let's carry on more or less with what we were talking about yesterday concerning the $1 bill. And this is how more or less the Masonic lodges are distributed. As you can see, in a pyramid form is their structure. From the base to the top is a way to manage power. At the bottom we have the simple masonry, the simple masons. And then in this inferior part, as you can see, it is divided in three groups. There are the Lions International and the Rotarios. Both these associations are recognized as philanthropic. They are dedicated to help a lot of people. In the schools they give computers, things that you can think of as benevolence. But behind is the masonry, and it is a nice way to give the image that the masonry is a good thing. Afterwards, on top of these people in the pyramid, there are some other things that are a bit more serious. The Great East Lodge, the genealogy B'nai B'rith that you can see here, that is something quite curious, because from this point, at this height of the pyramid, they are all Jews. In this particular lodge, they are all Jews, and if you pay attention to the recent news, you would have seen that these people have been reunited with the Pope Ratzinger, and it is not the first time that they do it. They have conversations very often. How can it be that the Vatican, that shows itself as anti-Masonic, even under excommunication, and on the other hand, they get together to have a chat? How can we understand this? On top of these people, there is a selected group, which is the one of the 33. And of these 33, there is another selected group, which is the 13. We are talking about very specific people. If you remember, yesterday we talked about the 13 levels that were in the pyramid. Those 13 levels also correspond to the 13 most dominating families at a global scale of the Masonry, all of them of Jewish origin. But I have to emphasize that these people of Jewish origin are not only the Jews that we think of in our Bible, but these were Ashkenazis. Have you heard of these people? Caucasian people that converted to the Jewish faith. They weren't from a Jewish lineage. And curiously, these people are the ones that induced the most amount of spiritism in the Jewish faith, and are the ones that are controlling everything. And to narrow the selection even more, we are going to mention two families, the Rothschild family and the Rockefeller, that are even related between them. These two families are basically the owners of the World Bank. Therefore, if they are the owners of the world's banks, then you can imagine that they are owners of practically everything. On top of that, the Rothschild family is considered by the Vatican as the guardians of their treasure. Well, that's strange, since they are anti-Masons. And on top of these people, there is only one character left, which is Lucifer himself. You know, between the Rothschild family there are some memorable quotes that say that they are proud to receive messages from Lucifer himself. For me, this is brutal. They say this with complete normality. Well, this is basically the structure that they use to go up in power. Normally, you do not ascend in power, but you are chosen by those who see that you are a good candidate for their purposes. And as they go ascending from one level to another, they are revealed to more secrets. That is why they are called the initiated, as they gain more knowledge. Here we have the front face of the $1 bill, and here the Bohemian Club, and what you see here is part of one of their reunions. People that have an immense forest, just for them, and joins together with many celebrities. Here you can see Ronald Reagan to the left, the ex-president of the United States, Richard Nixon also, and all of these are members of the Bohemian Club, and were photographed here in a meeting of the Bohemian Club in 1957. But they are not the only ones. It is full of famous people, from politics to the area of the arts, and you can think, well, what is wrong with these people meeting together there? Here you can see them. I don't know if you can appreciate what is behind them. Behind them there is a giant owl, where it seems that blood rituals are officiated. There was a reporter, who I do not know if he is Adventist, but he has much affinity. He managed to enter this place with a partner of his. This man was called Alex Jones, and the video can be found on internet. And it really gives you the shivers. He managed to go past all the security controls and filmed what these people were doing at night. As you can see, they are dressed in a very ceremonial way, and this is the owl where they officiate in fire. And in the recording you can hear very high screaming, so you can imagine what could be happening there. Maybe you can see it better here. Take a look at how they are dressed. Doesn't this remind you of anything? And the public starts whispering about the papal habits, and Victor mentions it as well. Yes, the papal habit. Well, these are their outfits. And this is what was in the fire. I don't know what you can see here. Do you see anyone? This is the owl from another perspective. And why exactly would they be doing these rituals for an owl? If we didn't understand anything about what we talked about yesterday, we would say, what are they doing exactly? Are they stupid? This responds to something. This is an invocation to Lucifer. And this, what you see here, do you know what it is? This is known as the tomb. Have you never seen it before? It is in Yale University. This is in the United States, and it is where the Skull and Bones Lodge has its headquarters. And in this lodge there are two very important politicians, among others, and a few that have just entered Obama's administration. These two characters, father and son, both are in this lodge, and this man as well. And who was this man? Do you remember? He was Bush's rival candidate, and they belong to the same lodge, theoretically rivals. Do you think it really would have mattered which of the two would have won the elections? The results would have been the same, of course, since they both follow the same principles on top of everything else. You think I'm making this up? You can see it here on a newspaper called La Vanguardia in Barcelona. The secret that unites Bush and Kerry. They both belong to the same masonry lodge. There was a woman, a journalist, that was investigating about this, and since it has been brought up, it hasn't been denied. So you can see who really is dominating the world. Here you can see the badge. Well, it's just fantastic, isn't it? What does it remind you, the skull and bones? It's like the flag of the pirates, isn't it? And do you think that pirates were pirates because they just wanted to be? Because they were hungry and they crossed the seas? Or were they responding to something else? Because there were people in governments that urged the piracy to amass great fortunes. Because at the end it all went to certain coffers. And take a look at these numbers that are below the skull. 322. And do you know what this is? Do you have your Bibles with you? Why don't you open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 22. And the Lord God said, The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. This verse is the one hiding the meaning of these numbers. And if you analyze this verse, it is simply saying that the man is like who? Like God. And this is the base of humanism, where man, separated from God, can develop himself widely. And where does the humanism come from? Well, it comes precisely from the Masonry, and now it is spreading across the world. This, what you are seeing here, is the Council for Foreign Relations of the USA. And if you look at the names that are below, you can see the main members, where the Rockefeller are, for a change, taking on the global politics of the United States. And take a look at the image on the top left corner. This is their emblem, where you can see a man riding on a horse. And in this precise image you can't appreciate it very well. In other images on the internet it can be seen better. But this man is doing a sign with his hand, like this. What symbol is this? For the North Americans, they will say that this is a very affectionate greeting. Maybe another day we will see who else does this greeting. But this symbol made with the hand is what is used in the satanic sects to adore the devil. Well, these people have it here as their emblem. These are the buildings of the Morgan Bank. Have you ever heard of the Morgan from the United States? These people are in high-level business and bank and many other things. If you can, take a look at their resumes to how they really amass these great fortunes, and you will see how they are truly denigrating. And they don't hide anything. Drug dealing, weapons dealing, whatever you can think about and more. And these people are the ones that have the great fortunes and are leading the nations, especially the United States. And they are doing everything that is in their hand to move the world to where they want it to go. And here we have John Pierpont Morgan. And this is his tomb. And as you can see, an obelisk. And this is David Rockefeller, from the Rockefeller family. He is one of the brothers. And this, Nelson Rockefeller. And if you have seen the meetings of Obama these recent days, you would have seen him sitting there. Personally, I would be quite afraid to have people like this near me. Here there is a meeting of the Bilderberg group. It is heard that they are the 500 most powerful people in the world, although they are not only people but also corporations. And there is precisely one of them that is announcing what they are doing in books. But this is not the top of the Masonry pyramid. Did you know that Queen Sofia from Spain belongs to this club? And do you know the politician Jordi Pujol? He was the president of Catalonia till a few years ago. Well, he was invited to these reunions, but he decided to not participate. He didn't want anything to do with this group. But as I said, this is not the top of the pyramid of the global Masonry. These people work for someone else. And here we have Mr. Rothschild, the beginner of the Sega, a Jewish banker from Germany, that his sons divided to themselves Europe, creating branches of their banks there in the different countries, in France, in Britain, Germany, and now they are trying to gain more control here in Spain. Edmund of Rothschild, and here Eric of Rothschild. That appeared on the back page of La Vanguardia in an interesting interview where he said that it is an advantage to be discreetly rich. Well, I think that his wealth is everything but discreet. But in this interview he says quite a few things that are pretty amazing. And here we are going to see something else. The Trilateral Commission. What do you see in this symbol? You can see the arrows, can't you? You can see there are 3 arrows. And what do these 3 arrows form in the middle? They form a perfect triangle. Can you see it? This can only be because it answers to what we are talking about right now. You just have to take a look at who are participating in the Trilateral Commission, because it's always the same names that are behind. Now, the United Nations organization. Do you know how the United Nations was formed? Was the United Nations created from one day to another, or does it respond to something that was before? Before the UN, another organization existed. Do you know which one it was? It was the League of Nations. And where is it located? In Geneva, Switzerland. And did you know that the ones that founded it were all Masons? Well, then they decided to reach out even more, and they used the same thing. They decided to create this, the UN, to end the wars over the world and give peace everywhere, to distribute health, food, culture. Behind this, the same people. UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. It is part of the same thing. Here you can see the Association of Students for the Defense of Heritage of the UNESCO Forum. If you take a look at the drawing, you can see where this comes from as well. And this here, do you know what it is? Lucis Trust? This company is an editorial. This company was created by a woman, a satanic woman, and before the name that it has now, the one it had at its beginning was Lucifer's Trust. Later on, since the name was too obvious, they changed it to Lucis Trust. And guess who are the people that are using this company to print what they are writing? The United Nations. The United Nations is using Lucifer's Trust, now called Lucis Trust, to put on paper everything that they are generating. And here are the symbols. As you see, they always have triangles. They aren't happy enough if they don't have them. Now, the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Does this ring a bell? Very important in the United States. Well, also the same people are the founders. And curiously, the UN was raised in a territory belonging to one of these people. And in this place, if you don't know, there are some meditations done to the light of the full moon. Obviously, these events are of satanic symbolism. And here is the Theosophical Society with Alice Bailey and Annie Besant, where you can see how she is dressed with the Masonry Lodge outfit, and Elena Blavatsky. All three of them are communicators of the spirits. And this is the emblem of the Theosophical Society. Take a look at this. As you can see, there are triangles, and in the center you can see a symbol. Do you know what symbol this is? This is an Egyptian symbol, the keys of Hades, with the sign of the cross. And when in Catholicism the cross is being used, it is not being used as how we may think it would be. It is referring to these origins, these Egyptian origins. And see that also there is an inverted triangle. And what do the two triangles shape between them? They form the six-pointed star that we were talking about yesterday. And what is around this symbol? The serpent that is biting its own tail, the Ouroboros, another satanic symbol. And on the top, a swastika, an inverted one. And the swastika that the Nazis wore was really referring to all the occult powers that were behind the Nazis. Didn't you know that Hitler belonged to Mason satanic orders? Therefore, that is why he did what he did. This symbol, in truth, is very old, and it refers to the worship of the sun, therefore worship to Lucifer. Well, these are the symbols of the Theosophical Society that are expanding so much through the New Age movement. And here we have precisely the beginning of the New Age movement that started with the search of its own Messiah, with the grade 33 of Masonry lead Beta. Him and his wife, Annie Besant, promoted a small adept as their messiah, Krishnamurti. In 1920, Alice married with another theosophist, Foster Bailey, and in 1923 they began the Mysterious School. After her death in 1949, the school was continued by her husband, which still prospers as an international organization, the Lucis Trust. Here you can see the emblem much better, and this is the pi symbol also. And this takes us to the same thing basically, because Pythagoras and company were all moving in the same philosophies. And it is very interesting, the motto that they have here. There is no higher religion than the truth. Because they do not move in religion as we do. For them, the only importance is truth, although what they believe as truth is precisely the error. And here we have the badge of the International Monetary Fund and the Global Bank. And what can you see at the bottom of the emblem? These are olive branches. These two institutions are below the power of the same people. Also, the Club of Rome. Have you heard of the Club of Rome? This is a group of intellectuals, mostly European, that are dedicated to write in which direction the global politics should be going, with guidelines to how the world can improve. Well, it precisely goes to where they want it to go, not to any improvement. Well, and here is some information about the membership of this club. And here we have Henry Dunant, the founder of the Red Cross, and first Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, and Nobel was also a Mason, and it is normal that the institution of the Nobel Prize gives prizes precisely to Masons. And this is the badge of the Red Cross. But do you know what this man's beliefs were? What does the Red Cross remind you of? What did the Templars have on their shields or on their armour? And the thing is that this man was nothing more than a Templar Knight. And the Red Cross was nothing more than another way to expand Masonry around the world through good deeds. What they don't explain is that first they create the catastrophe so that then they can appear with the solution. They don't talk about this, but the Red Cross answers to the same interests. I am not making this up. Look, this man here was a Rosicrucian knight, belonging to Masonry lodges. And here we have the Order of Malta, a very powerful institution, and look who is in the photograph. King Juan Carlos I, King of Spain. It is said that the King Juan Carlos never accepted to enter a Masonry lodge, but I ask myself, what on earth is the Order of Malta then? And they answer basically to Catholic principles, and they are the ones that say they are taking peace to the Palestine regions in the area of Israel, but they are sowing evil everywhere. They are a very powerful institution that works basically everywhere, many benefactors, and between them there are people like Javier Solana, which is the man, as you know, in charge of the foreign affairs in the European community, belonging to this same order. And these people, in truth, and they manifest this openly, answer to the Catholic Church's interests. Here there is a list of all the countries where they are acting, and this is the official web page. As you'll see, they are practically everywhere. And this is the man who I was talking to you about yesterday, Dr. Alberto Rivera, the ex-Jesuit. He was from the Canary Islands and finally ended up living in Barcelona, where he was murdered. And this man was the one that started to reveal with much strength which people were on the high scales of the global masonry. And he commented that he was quite surprised when he saw that the person that was instructing him and his group weared a certain ring, and it was the Black Pope, the leader of the Jesuits. And on this ring, do you know what was on it? The square and the compass. When he realized that Catholicism and the Masonry at high levels of power were close together, his world fell apart. And that is when he started to react. And here we have the very chip that I imagine that you've already heard about it. This is the official page of the very chip, owned by Applied Digital. This company makes these kind of artifacts that you can see here. It looks quite big, but its real size is like a big grain of rice. And it is implanted inside people, so as to know where you are in the case that you are kidnapped. It is used also for people with heart diseases, so that when they enter a hospital for an urgent intervention, then they scan them with a scanner, like in the supermarkets when you cross over the products and it goes beep beep with the code bars. Well, this would be like the substitute for the code bars, but in a human implanted under the skin. And this is already being implanted in people in Barcelona in a famous discotheque, and in Holland as well. The VIPs don't use any cash, they just get scanned, and all the drinks and everything that they have bought is registered, and they pay by this chip under the skin. So if these people don't use physical money for anything, then what do you think is this going to be used for? When you hear the classes of the producers of this product and of the man that is distributing this in Spain, called Conrad Chase, if you haven't heard of this man, he appeared in a Big Brother program on television. Of course, there were interests to exhibit this product, since this man got quite far in the program, and because of this, in many interviews, the product was explained how many advantages it could have for the people. Theoretically, they are all advantages, but we are going to see something more that is not speaked of normally. Here it says, the objective of this innovative technology is to provide an identification system on a global level that eliminates the need of carrying a document of identification or a credit card. So this is for your identity and to replace money, apart from your location, even from a satellite. Now, who is promoting all of this? Those of you that have phones will probably have one from this company, which is Motorola. And the thing is that this device has a lithium charge. I don't know if you've heard of lithium before. Do you know where it is extracted from? In which countries? It is extracted from some countries in Africa that, curiously, in these countries they are killing each other. What a coincidence. And in the meanwhile, the lithium goes out of the country to make mobiles, to make very chips and many other things. There are interests to have people killing themselves while they are taking this out of the country. And how is this recharged, the very chip? Well, it is precisely recharged with the changes of temperature in the human body. They started to implant this in the top of the forearm, but they are seeing that it is not practical. And you can see how in Hollywood they are already sending messages where you can see certain characters in the movies that when they approach a door, they cross it with the back of their hand in a certain place and the door opens. And in others where you can see characters in a bar, for example, paying a drink, and they cross the back of their hand on top of something and they pay just with the sound of a beep. So what messages are they sending us with these movies? They are telling us that this is practical and is even good for us. But it has to do with something else that they are not telling you about. The lithium exposed to the human body, if this device would break in any circumstance inside the human body, the reaction would be to create tremendous ulcers that can end up in death. And curiously, do you remember any part of the Bible where it mentions a mark or on the right hand or on the forehead? And precisely the two places that are the best located to recharge this very chip is precisely on the forehead or on the right hand. We may sometimes talk about the mark of the beast exclusively as the Sunday, and that is true, but this also has some additional connotations. Doesn't it say that anyone without the mark will not be able to buy or sell? There will be a moment when this will be imposed. We can see through the media how they are using cases of thieves that have robbed credit cards and in very little time have emptied these credit cards of all the money that they had. Basically, they are sending the message that the credit cards are not safe. They basically want to eradicate the physical cash so that they can take control over the black money. As the Pope has said, and Obama, what a great way to reactivate morality using this to eradicate the black money. That using something like this can be justice for everyone. And who is going to be the brave Adventist that will say, no, I don't want one of these, because without one of these things in my body, I won't be able to buy or sell, and I become an outlaw in my own society. How could I survive in a city this way? And you know, Elena White writes about this subject. She says that concerning the 666, it is true what has been said until today, and that includes the Vicarius Filii Dei that you all know of, but accompanied with more things that we would see in the future. She warns about this. She warns also about the difficulty of living in the cities for the Adventist people when the Sunday law comes out, and all this is talking about how if you do not go the way that society wants you to go, you will be an outlaw going against the greater good. She describes these situations very well. Here you can see the amplified size of the very chip and the way that it is injected. This is inserted inside the body. The thing is taking it out that risks your life. And here's the scanner that is used. And in which countries has there been a massive purchase of these devices to implant them in their population? Well, here you have a list, and you have United Kingdom, Canada, United States, Australia, where this product was developed, and New Zealand, Israel, Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, Macau, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, India, Taiwan, Sri Lanka, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Panama, Honduras, El Salvador, and Brazil. I can imagine that by now there are a couple more. And so if you don't know, I'm going to tell you the story of the very chip. This all became because of the war in Vietnam. There is a man that is very important in the American politics named Henry Kissinger. And this man ordered various scientists to investigate on the implantation of a chip in people that had problems with their spinal column caused by accidents in the war. Later on it was said that it could be used for everyone, since it apparently reactivated the areas that had been affected, etc. That they began to regain movement again. But the thing is that when it was all developed, they eliminated completely their budget, and they told them that they had finished their investigation. Some of the scientists even reacted with anger as they asked them how come that this product is not going to be released as it can help many people. The excuse that they gave them was that it was not profitable. But this was only the first step for the Masonry to develop something that was to be used for something else than what they were telling the scientists. Precisely, one of the people that mostly worked on this artifact was an atheist, and that he read the text in Revelation where it says, "Everyone small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark." And because of this text he became a Christian, because he said, how can it be that the Bible mentioned this 2,000 years before it happens? What science can explain this? Well, this man still gives his testimony. And the company that moves this is Mundex. Here you have an image of the implant, and the meaning of Mundex, mon, which is monetary or belonging to the money, and dex, which is dexter, which is belonging to or located in the right hand. Well, that's a coincidence, isn't it? And well, here you can see that I'm jumping from one topic to another, since I'm doing a summary of the conferences that we've been doing lately. This man is Charles Darwin, known as the creator of the evolution theory, or the theory of species. And this man, who is he? Erasmus Darwin, his grandfather. And what does he have to do with all this? Let us see something. This man, precisely the grandfather, do you know where he was inscripted in? He was in the Masonry. And he was the man that incentivated his grandson to take on the idea as a scientist that would take down the idea of Christianism. And from this, all the evolution movement came forward with so much strength because these people were behind the movement. You know how we as humans have spent so much time to prove through archaeology that the evolution is not true. And that is okay, but there really isn't no need for so much proof. Simply proving from where the information is from where the theory is from, we can see that the origin of this is from no good place. And this that you see here is the cover page of a book called The Botanical Garden, written precisely by Darwin's grandfather. And what can you see here in this image? Can you see like a man in underwear from behind? As you can see, there is like a waterfall between each feet, and in the middle you can see a face. All of this relates to occult symbolism. And look at his head. The public says that they can't appreciate very well the image. And Victor explains that the head looks like a bull. It has the shape of a bull or an ox. This could remind you of a mythological creature, doesn't it? But if you can see, he also has his hands together, joined together, pointing to the sky. And at the top there is a six-pointed star. So with this you can see the origin of the evolution theory. Another deceit coming from the Masonry. And you know that the evolutionary movement was caused by what exactly? This isn't spoken about with ordinary people. What happened exactly at the moment that the evolutionary theory came out? What event occurred on a religious level? The public responds some things that I can't understand, but one thing that they do say is the worship of the Saturday. And Victor says, yes, there it is. The truth about the Saturday comes up with much strength. And do you think that Satan could stay still, seeing how many people were being converted to Christianism? That was not in his interest, so he promoted the evolution theory. It isn't a coincidence. And this here is Albert Pike. Does he ring a bell? Yes, this man has a grade 33 of Masonry. He's from the United States. He was a Confederate war general that later on changed sides. He is the only Confederate that has a monument in Washington. Now, why would that be? And this man was, to say it in some way, the head chief in the Masonry lodges. And I think yesterday I mentioned another man that I spoke about, Giuseppe Mazzini. Do you remember? Well, between this man, Giuseppe Mazzini, the leader of the Grand Orient of Italy Lodge in the European area, and this other man, Albert Pike, it turns out that there is an exchange of correspondence. And in one of these letters that was written many, many years ago, during the Civil War in the United States, this man, Albert Pike, writes to Giuseppe Mazzini a letter describing a scenery in a certain place where certain opponents would be used to fight between them and create the First World War. When was the First World War? Between 1914 and 1918. You see, if you look up the letter, you can see how it describes perfectly which which opponents would be used to create the situation. It even says where. It describes it perfectly. And you could say, well, that's a coincidence. But the thing is that following down the letter, it says that there would be a Second World War. And it describes who would be used to create the conflict and where. And it happened precisely where it said it would. And then it mentions a Third World War. And do you know who are the ones that will be involved in this war? It describes that the Zionist movement will be used to lift up or create a great struggle against the Islamic world, confronting the East against the West. Haven't we seen how the United States have gone to invade Afghanistan, Iraq? All of this is being fulfilled, and much more will be seen. And here is a letter, an answer that we received from a Masonic order in Colombia, Canada. An answer to the question as to if the letter of Albert Pike was really true or not. It is said that the original of the letter is in the British Museum. We called the British Museum and asked them if the letter was there, and they answered that the letter had never been there. But there was a man, retired from the secret services, that denounced that the letter really had been there, and made it public. And curiously, he wrote about a woman that had written about the same things that were in the letter from Albert Pike years before this letter was sent. When we asked for an explanation, we were told that it was all fake, it wasn't true, that it was all made to defame the Masonry. But they themselves revealed some of the aspects that, if I can in some other time, I will talk about. Let's carry on with what we have here. The Masonry has Luciferianism traditionally. This is said by the great master of the Illuminati order. And truly, when you start to see the people that are involved in the Masonry, you cannot but be impressed. Now, he asks the public if they see a name in the text that he's showing. He says, do you see a name here? Hiram Abif. Do you know who he is? Can you think of anyone in your Bibles that is named Hiram? Actually, there are two Hirams that appear in the Bible. One of them is the king of Tyre, and the other one. Who's the other one? Who did Solomon use to build the temple? It was this man that was a great constructor and architect. And this man was in origin Jewish, but from the other side, the pagan side. And from that strange conjuncture that God said could never be joined, came this man that you can read in Ellen White's writings as completely deplorable, and also is said to be the father of the global masonry, he is described as the instigator and precursor of disgrace upon the people of Israel, because he started to ask for even more and more money, as his work was amazing and had to be rewarded. And not only this, but he instigated his workers to do the exact same thing. And because of this, Solomon had great trouble to be able to pay. And what did he have to do? Well, he was forced to annoy others to be able to reach this amount. And in the end, he did precisely what his father didn't do. So a temple was built for God, but in which ways? This caused the people of Israel to be drawn away from God once more. Well, this person is exalted by the Masons. And here we have an image that is worth looking at. You can imagine, when I was 7 years old, when I entered the church, the first book that I read was The Great Controversy, along with the Bible. When I was 13, I read it again. And when I saw this image on television, I was completely amazed, because it was the graphical representation of the prophecy in the clearest way that I could imagine. Who can we see there on their knees before the corpse of the Pope? The current President of the United States and the ones before him. All three of them on their knees. How is it that a government like the United States, that is completely Protestant and anti-Catholic in its origins, because that is how it was created, now are on their knees before the Pope? Let us remember what happened in 1929 with the Lateran Treaty. What was granted to the Vatican? Precisely the recovery of everything that was lost since the French Revolution. And we many times apply exclusively the biblical text that says that the mortal wound is healed, relating this message to that moment. And this is true. And if this image is not a confirmation of this, then what is it? Take a look at this now. The 2nd of April of 2005, the death of Pope John Paul II. And if you take a look and start making numbers in a Kabbalistic way, you'll see that 2 plus 4 plus 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 5 makes 13. No, it's just a coincidence. He passed away, they said, at 21 hours and 37 minutes. Not 1 minute more or less. 2 plus 1 plus 3 plus 7 makes 13. Curiously, Ratzinger is named Pope, and he is the Pope number 265. 2 plus 6 plus 5, 13. The hour of the Fumata Blanca, when he is chosen, 17 hours 50 minutes. 1 plus 7 plus 5, 13. When they proclaim Habemus Papam, it is said at precisely 18 hours and 40 minutes. 1 plus 8 plus 4 equals 13. Bishop of Rome, number 148, buried beside St. Peter. I think there's no need to add this one up. And during these precise moments, on a 11th day of a month precisely, there was a meeting between Bush and Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel at the time. The day of that meeting was also a number 13, on an 11th, which means approved by divine law. And another event occurred, the tension in the esplanade of the mosques. And you know, the strategic point is the Mount Zion. And what do the Jews want to build there? The third temple. But in this place there is a building that is not from the Jewish culture. And this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this area has restricted access to the Jews. So for them to build their third temple, and for their messiahs to come, the mosque cannot be there. Therefore, what do you think can happen here? The tensions there are precisely because the Muslims have denounced many times that they believe their mosque to be endangered by the Jews, that want to build their third temple. And maybe some other day we can talk about the building of the third temple. You could be quite surprised. Let's see this summary of coincidences. Do you think that these popes could die at precise moments and it would be simply a coincidence? Who knows if they died 1 minute before or after, or even hours before? But the official moment of death that they decide to give to the public is the one that they choose. Of course, they answer to their leader, to Satan. And here we have Our Lady of Fatima, or known as the Virgin of Fatima in Spain. On what day did she appear? On the 13th of May. What a coincidence, the appearances of virgins on a 13th. Another thing that doesn't happen by coincidence. It says here that the Virgin appeared as Our Lady of the Holy Rosary. There had been more than 70,000 appearances up to the 13th of October of 1917. You know, she appeared every 13th day, on different months, but always on the 13th. This doesn't sound very divine to me. And here is a text from the Bible that says, "And it is no wonder, as it is Satan himself who disguises as an angel of light." And also the beatification of Pope John Paul II, the date that was chosen for the announcement, the 13th of May. The festivity of the Virgin of Fatima, to whom John Paul II attributes his salvation in the terrorist attack that he suffered in St. Peter's Square on 1981. Also a 13th of May. Neither those who shot the bullet or those that received it were ignorant to all of this. The number 11 means to them that there is no fear because it is favourable to divine law. And now that you've seen all of this, we are going to grab our Bibles and start reading. We will open the book of Esther. You know that Elena White writes that what happens in the book of Esther will be repeated at the end of times with God's people. Look at chapter 3. You all know the story between Haman and Mordecai, and how Haman not only gets angry with Mordecai because he does not kneel before him, one is Jew and the other is not. The Jew obviously knows that he cannot kneel before another man, because that means to worship. And Haman gets furious and wants not only him but the whole Jewish people to be exterminated. We are going to see a more than interesting detail, and this is in our Bibles. So we are going to read verse 12. Then on the 13th day, 13th of the first month, and remember this, the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out in the script of each province and in the language of each people all Haman's orders to the king's satraps, the governors of the various provinces, and the nobles of the various peoples. These were written in the name of King Xerxes himself, and sealed with his own ring. But let's not settle with this. Let's carry on. Verse 13. Curiously 13. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and little children, on a single day, the 24th? No, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. The first decree, when does it appear? On the 13th of what month? Of the first. And for the order to be applied, so as they can murder them, it is another 13th day, but of what month? The 12th. And how many months are there between one and the other? 11. And this is in our Bibles. These men, pagans, that were working against God's people, they already knew what they were playing at. And these people, referring to the popes, are the followers of their satanic mysticism. The number 22, which means for them the truth, victory, triumph, everything will come out well, good luck, power, strength. Basically it is the number 11 but doubled. And the number 33 is the number of the martyr or the redeemer. Also the number of tests. It is the internal Christ, love, harmony, and has the characteristics of the number 6 but much more highlighted. And all of this is taken from their own pages. So you can notice how numbers are so important for them, and that certain events coincide. These things do not happen as a coincidence. The number 6, the human soul, the number of the man, victory, meaning the man separated from God. When was humanity created? On the 6th day. Let's take a look at something here that more or less we looked at yesterday. A comparative to what appears in Rome and what is also in Washington. What is uniting them? The obelisk. Now let's read 2nd of Kings chapter 10 verse 25 and 26. As soon as Jehu had finished making the burnt offering, he ordered the guards and officers, "Go in and kill them, let no one escape." So they cut them down with the sword. The guards and officers threw the bodies out and then entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. You know who Baal was, right? But do you know what it represented? It represented the god of the sun, Lucifer. They brought the obelisk out of the temple of Baal and burned it. In our Bibles it usually says statues, or even sacred pillars or sacred stones, but there are versions that say it exactly how it should be translated, and that is the obelisk. How can it be that God, for the Jewish people and of course for the Christians, demolish the obelisk because it is something that is so satanic, and in the Vatican they have one, and in Washington also they have one as well, as Protestant as they are, along with many other places? Something does not fit in its place here, does it? And here Jeremiah chapter 43 verse 13. In my Bible it says, "There in the temple of the sun in Egypt he will demolish the sacred pillars and will burn down the temples of the gods of Egypt." In the text that Victor is reading, it says he will demolish the statues of Bet-Semes. Bet-Semes was a city also known as the city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun where the obelisks were taken from. He explains that the version he has just read is not quite a good one for him, but he says that there is an older one that explains it perfectly, and the verse says, "He will demolish the obelisks of Heliopolis in Egypt and will burn down the temples of the gods of Egypt." Well, as you can see then, it's quite a coincidence who are the people that are displaying these symbols. The Adventist Bible Dictionary says obelisk, term that appears in the Hebrew of Jeremiah 43:13, and translated to statues in a passage that describes the destruction of cult objects in the Egyptian city of the sun, Bet-Semes, Heliopolis. So as you can see, I'm not making this up. And here you can see St. Peter's Square with all the symbols that we talked about yesterday, referring to the worship to the sun, about the phallus, the sexual act. And here you can see in Rome the Pope when he comes out to the balcony where he directs to, or to whom, straight to the obelisk. And the crowds are there, but he never looks at the crowd. He always raises his arms whilst he gazes to the obelisk. And now we're going to talk a bit about the crozier. what the Pope carries. And here we have John Paul II with his crucifix. So wonderful. Don't you see something strange in this crucifix? It is curved forward, but now we are going to see it from another perspective. Let's take a look at the figurine. Do you see here a Christ that is in good health and well made? One of the public says that he looks scrawny, and Victor answers, I don't know really what adjective to use to describe this image. Surely not a positive one. And this is the one that carried Benedict XVI. And see if you can appreciate the top parts of the cross here, the parts that crosses horizontally. As you can see, it's not straight, is it? It's bent. And this crozier is known as the bent cross, also referred as the broken cross. And he used the same crucifix as his predecessors. It is the same crucifix used by Paul VI, John Paul I, and John Paul II. Why is Christ represented in this manner, and a cross in that way? Well, so that you know, there is a man called Pius Compton, a very fervent Catholic, also editor for a Catholic publisher, where he himself denounces how strongly the Vatican has been infiltrated by the satanic sector, and he explains where this crucifix comes from. It comes from the 6th century and was used by the Satanists to go against Christ. And curiously, the Vatican uses the same symbol. And what do the crowd do when the Pope crosses through them? They bow. So who are they worshipping then? Who are they bowing to? To him and to Satan. Because remember what the Bible says. Who gives the power to the beast? It is Satan. And this is a card game made in 1995. Illuminati New World Order. And this card game was taken off the market. And you will see now for what reasons. This scene, I imagine you can all remember, the famous attack to the Twin Towers, and this is one of the cards in the game from 1995. This game received the first prize given to a card game. Well, this is quite a gift of fortune telling, isn't it? But I don't know if you've heard that precisely the building that was on the other side, when the Twin Towers fell, after a small period of time, the other one fell down as well. And I don't know if you can see it in the image, but that building is marked as well with a triangle. A woman from the public asks again, what is the name of the card game? Inwo. It can be found on the internet. And there was a fair in Barcelona where you could purchase it, but there are some things that have been changed. This game has had various extensions. There is a story that I could tell, but basically Bush's father was the director of the CIA at these moments, and he was the one that ordered the expropriation of this card game and the computers of the company that made it. But were these people fortune tellers to know all this information? And look at this image. Do you remember what this was? This is the Pentagon. And can you see the huge aeroplane that has crashed in the building? Can you see it? No? Why can't you see it? Because it's not there. So if it's not there, how are you going to see it? But let's take a look at this photo. This photo was done by a camera that took one of the first images, and they didn't manage to expropriate it. And it is right at the moment of the destruction. You can see as the building falls down from above, but at the bottom there is still something completely intact. When they have sold us the idea that there was a plane that crashed here, then obviously we would have seen First of all, the impact of the plane on the grass on the field before the building to be able to do the damage that is seen in the photo. I don't know about you, but I see the field quite perfectly undamaged. Anyway, there are quite a few things that don't match with the official news and information that they have given. But they had to give some kind of story to the people, to the world population in general, to later go against the Islamic world, with certain interests of course. And take a look at this card, where you can see the impact on the Pentagon, which is still intact, because really the impact on the building wasn't quite that much. And the destruction apparently was in a place of the building that was in construction, curiously. Another card. I don't know what this can remind you of. Mutual betrayal. Families that murder each other. And what is happening lately? This is happening daily. You just have to put on the news to see that this is happening every day. Did you know that Elena White wrote about one of the signs of the last days would be that precisely this, that the families would murder one another? How could she have known this if not inspired by God? But these people know that this would happen because of other motives, because they know who is guiding this. And now we can see in this card an earthquake, and what do we have on the left of the image? What is this artifact that is creating these waves? It's a device that creates earthquakes. And you'll say, no, this just appears in Hollywood, this is fake, it's not true. And in a conference that I did in Girona, there were some people from Ukraine that said, no, okay, the things that you said before, okay, but this is not true, we don't believe it. And the next Saturday at church they told me that when they went home after the conference, and they live in the coast in Girona, and they have satellite television, not only for the television in Ukraine but Russia as well, and that while they were watching a television program, something inside him was telling him to change the channel, to change the channel quickly. These things sometimes happen. And he changed the channel onto the Russian channel, where precisely they were emitting a Soviet documentary where the tests on this device were being used in 1975, where they were creating the first provoked earthquakes. And they said on the documentary that they never dared to do this on a fault of the Earth's crust, because of the mass destruction that it could cause. But something happened in the Soviet Union. That machine was bought by someone. Do you know by who? The government of the USA. And from that moment on, earthquakes were even more common. And curiously, as well, before the American troops enter a country to attack, an earthquake occurs right at the place that they were going to go, causing disaster before their arrival. Well, that must be just a coincidence. Maybe it is God just clearing the path for them. I doubt it. Now, do you remember anything like this? A gigantic wave that is going into the land. There is a lot of data saying that the famous tsunami that caused so much disaster was provoked. And the authorities of Malaysia even tried to prove that the United States was behind this. And this card, take a look at it. You can see how the man is basically giving orders to the plane that is dragging the cloud from one place to another, and also ordering the hurricane to go from one place to another. Is it possible to manipulate all these things? Well, yes, it is. Precisely, the UN had to bring up a law saying that it was not permitted to bring up more geophysical weaponry. That is how this is called. That these weapons can create catastrophes and change the weather at free will. And now they talk about climate change. Of course, climate change now is the issue. Someday we will talk about precisely what is behind the climate change movement. The recyclers. Oh, recycle. Well, recycling is good, isn't it? Of course, yes, it's good to recycle. But pay attention to the recycling symbol. Here you can only see it partially, but if you look at any product that you buy that can be recycled, you will see a triangle of 3 arrows that are pointing to each other in a cycle. And why would it have to be a triangle? Like, you can guess why. You can start investigating who is behind the companies of recycling and who they serve it to, and you'll understand the movement. But it is not only this, because apart from generating quite a bit of money, yes, it goes well for humanity and conservation, etc., it is done with certain purposes, and it is to mentalize the people that the earth has to be preserved, and that implies morality, and who is going to be the highest exponent in morality. And this is in the prophecies. It will be the papacy. There is much more than what we see at first sight. Eco-gorillas, says this card. Greenpeace, for example? No, Greenpeace can't be in this. No, no one will believe that. Well, you can investigate a bit and see who finances Greenpeace apart from the donations. And you'll find out that they are the same people that are on the top of the pyramid of the Illuminati, the Rockefeller and so on. And why, you will ask yourself, how is it that they are working in favour to one side and against on the other? Because that is their game, the duality. To give the solution, you have to create the conflict. And for people to accept it, it is necessary for the conflict to be strong. If you promote one side and the other, and make them impact with each other, the people will want a solution. And the solution will not be given by the politicians, because they just simply can't. An absolute moral leader will be asked for, and these phrases are already circulating. We must pay attention to this, because the Pope is being established as that moral leader. And Obama, right now, is talking about the same thing. Hollywood. Well, I don't really have to tell you who's behind Hollywood, do I? If you take a look at who's behind all the cinematographic companies, you'll see they are all Zionist Jews, precisely belonging to all these groups and lodges. Therefore, do you really think that Hollywood is going to offer us a film, a movie that is really in our benefit? Or are they going to transmit values that is in their interest to put inside people's minds? Like the positiveness of homosexuality and many, many other things. But also, always giving very subtle messages, like the ones that I talked about before, about the very chip.